Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our course breakdown for this week's RBC Heritage, a signature event. A lot of the world's best teeing it up in Harbour Town golf links, a quirky but I think real entertaining design that is going to host these tour players. So I'm going to break down everything you need to know about this week's venue, including a look at some of the course details, a hole-by-hole breakdown of the shots that these players are going to be facing, and then towards the end, some of my key stats and modeling that I'm using to identify some of my top plays. So whether you're playing DFS over there on the betting side of things, it'll give you a good taste of what to expect in terms of course conditions. So with that being said, a lot to talk about here. Let's go ahead and hop on in with our course details. Harbour Town Golf Links is a Pete Dye design over there on Hilton Head Island in South Carolina, and much more of a positional golf course than what we had at the Masters. It's tree lines down every single hole, a lot of angles that you have to create into the greens, and because it is so tight, oftentimes when you're in the fairway, you're not even going to have a shot onto the green. So it is much more about that precision than the power like you saw at Augusta, and you'll see that with some of your top fives and winners at this golf course. So unlike some of the other signature designs which really favor that power player, some of your elite tier guys, this is much more wide open. You can have some older players, some guys that maybe aren't as high tier, go out there and actually win this golf tournament. So last year, of course, it was Matty Fitz. Jordan Spieth was a runner-up in a playoff, winner the year before that, and Patrick Cantlay has had a bunch of top finishes here. So a little bit of a course horse track, and in general, a very atypical skill set that gets it done around here. So you'll see that with our key stats later. There's a few real specific things that we're looking for and that are kind of unique to this kind of golf course. So a few things to note is a par 71 and only 7,200 yards. So definitely on the shorter end of the spectrum, but one thing worth noting are that there are a ton of layups around this golf course. So it actually plays a little bit longer than the scorecard yardage. Oftentimes you're only hitting an iron, maybe a 3-wood off of the tee. So your approach shots come in at a little bit of a longer distribution than you'd probably expect for a 7,200 yard golf course. Greens are tiny. They're only 3,700 square foot. There's water in play on 18 holes. That's at least what they claim. I can tell you from being there in person last year that it's really closer to like 12 holes that have water in it, but they have it listed at 18. And the one major difference agronomy wise, at least here for 2024, is going to be the rough that's a little bit shorter. So last year they had it at 2.5 inches. In 2024, it is going to be half of that length. So just 1.25 inches this time around. So perhaps a little bit less penal than what we had before, but it wasn't a crazy gnarly type of rough anyway. So slightly easier conditions here in 2024, at least if weather is going to cooperate. In terms of your other agronomy stuff, so specs include Poetrivillus overseed over there on the greens. You have a ryegrass overseed for the rough fairways, all of that. So very in line with what we had for the last 2 months on the PGA Tour. So Augusta, a little bit different agronomy, but we're talking Houston Open, Valero, right? All of those Florida events were on the same kind of agronomy. So very consistent with some of our recent form metrics. So that's it from the course specs. In terms of averages, you can see fairway average a little bit higher, especially with all the layups that you're hitting. Green and regulation average slightly lower than the PGA Tour. Ran a little bit firmer last year than what we're used to seeing. So we'll have to see if that happens in 2024. Scrambling rate higher than the Tour average. You don't really have difficult greens at this resort style golf course. Birdie average slightly below the Tour average. Again, not a crazy easy, not a crazy hard golf course. Last year, your winner was 17 under par. We've had it in the 20 under par range, 22 under par range, and also closer to like 10, 11 under par. So, depending on the weather, because it is a coastal golf course, it can play harder. It could also play as an absolute birdie fest. So nothing is really too out of the ordinary here. If we take a look at the course fit tool over there on Data Golf, you can see that they're around the green, a little bit more important here than most golf courses. Approach play, same thing, in driving accuracy too. You'll see the driving accuracy aspect when we go through this hole by hole, but approach play, always important at a tour event, especially important here. And if anything is less important, it would be the putting and the driving distance. So all that is going to be especially obvious when we go through the hole by hole aspect. And what I want to take a look at here is first off this approach distribution. So you can see that 175 to 200 yard range is utilized a ton more than you see at other golf courses. So part of that is all the layups that you're hitting, even on seemingly short holes. A lot of times you're left with 175 yards plus. So you can see that is a little bit used over your tour average, right? Same thing with 250 yards plus. And what's something to note is even though it's only 7,200 yards, right? You're 75 to 100, right? You're 50 to 75. Even like your 100 to 125, your 125 to 150 yard ranges aren't that much out of shape, right, compared to your tour average. So all of that may be a little bit surprising out there in a golf course that, unless you take a look at it hole by hole, could be a little bit misleading. So let's go ahead and hop on into that so I can give you guys an idea of what they're facing. Now to quickly go hole by hole. So hole number 1's a layup off the tee. The fairway literally runs out, so there's really no incentive to hitting a driver. And you can see the importance of getting it towards the center of the fairway. If you miss too far to the right, you're gonna have to hit a fade into any right side pin location. And if you miss over here on the left side of the fairway, you're gonna have to hit a draw to any left side pin. So obviously you wanna set up the correct angle into the green, and a lot of that depends on your pin location. Hole 2 is your first really scoreable look. It is only 555 yards, but you have to hit it to the right portion of this fairway, or else you're going to have to hit a real shaped shot in there. So a lot of people miss over here to the right. I can tell you that from experience. I'm seeing a lot of players in person. If you're in this fairway bunker, it is almost a for sure layup. The fairway bunker isn't all that deep. It's just that it's hard to move it in one direction or the other when you're in that sort of, bunker, right? It's harder to get the spin on the ball that you're looking for. And because of the trees that are overhanging, you have to lay up over here to the right side. Hole number 3 is 466, so a mid-length par 4, a driver hole, one of the rare instances where almost everyone's going to hit a driver there. Hole 4 is 195 yards, certainly have water in play here. Also a long iron shot unless they move up the tee box. Hole 5 is 565, so a par 5, definitely another driver hole. But the issue is it's real hard to hold this fairway unless you're hitting something less than driver, right? So a lot of players will hit 3-wood to this corner. If you decide to hit a driver with the lower rough this year, I think that might be a little bit more common. With this kind of course setup, you'd be aiming over here towards this little crosswalk. Hole 6 is 420 yards. It's a little dogleg from left to right. So you can hit driver here, but I don't know if there's a huge incentive to doing so, because even if you hit a 3-wood to the corner, you're left with a pitching wedge, degreed wedge in. Hole 7 is 195. You also have water in play on this hole, but maybe a little bit less in play than what you had with your first par 3. Hole 8 is 474, so at least for this golf course would be one of your longer par 4s. You're going to hit driver here in most cases, but you can see there's a little bit of a run out area here, so your longer players like a Rory, power players like an EVR, etc. are probably going to have to lay back a little bit. So this is all about the angles. If you get behind this tree on the right with the water to the left, I mean, you have to fade it off of that, right? If you're a right-handed player, right? You'd have to hook it off that if you're a lefty. That's where a lot of your big numbers come in. Hole 9 is borderline drivable. This all comes down to wind direction. If it's playing downwind, everyone will try and hit it up towards the green. If it's not, only your power players are going to do so. The green is real severe. It's hard to get up and down on. So even if you get it up near the complex, it is by no means a guaranteed birdie. Hole number 10 is a mid-length par 4. It is a layup for most players. You can hit driver here if you're comfortable not having a left miss. Last year, Matty Fitz in his final round hit it way over here on the right. So there's no issues doing so. You should be able to get it over those trees and into the green as long as you're far enough back. 11 is 437. There's a narrow chute on this hole, and if you miss right, it's real difficult to get it up near the green. Now, these trees, they have high enough branches where you can hit low running shots up to the green complexes here. It is a golf links, so you usually have some room up front to try and move up the golf ball, but that takes a lot of creativity, and there's a lot of room for error to happen, or I should say a lack of room of error out there on those kind of shots. Hole 12 is 434, so mid-length par 4, but you got to shape it from left to right to try and hold this fairway. And once again, if you're not real precise with that, these trees just become real annoying, especially if you're missing on the inside of some of these dog legs. Hole 13 is 376, so in theory, if they moved up the tee box, they could make this drivable, but at least when I've been there to watch, I haven't seen that happen. So, most of the time is going to be a layup and then a wedge in. We'll have to see if they do something with the setup. You never know. You could definitely do it there at 13. 14 is 192. This is the hole where Cantlay was stuck against the boards last year. Was a lot of fun to watch that. But yeah, real difficult par 3, of course. 15 is 588, so a longer par 5 that you have at this course, and certainly a driver off the tee, and a lot of people that won't go for it in 2 because it is a slightly risky shot around this corner of trees there. If you hit it in it and end up missing on the inside of that dog leg, could be problematic. 16 is 423, dog leg from right to left. Your longer players can try and, take on this bunker a little bit and hit it further down here towards the left. That is sometimes the move up the tee box too, and you can try and get it out here like 60, 70 yards in front of the green, but a fun hole for sure. Hole 17 is where they do the playoff sometimes over here at the Harbour Town Golf Links. You have the incoming coastal wind out there from the bay, and a real difficult hole for sure. 18 is 470. It plays into the wind for a lot of rounds, or at least a side wind if it's coming off of the bay there. And it's a longer par 4 with a real difficult second shot. Your fairway is one of the easiest to hit in all of golf. In fact, it's like 100 yards wide, so almost impossible to miss 18 fairway. But the green shot is extremely difficult. You've got this hazard to the left and in front that'll swallow up golf balls, and an extremely undulated green that is difficult for ups and downs. Now that we've seen the golf course, let's go through some of my modeling for this week and some of the key stats I'm using to identify my top plays. So whether you're betting DFS, these are the sort of things that I'm looking at to try and pick my top plays. So approach play is always a number one target of mine. Always the last 24, 12 rounds, right, are going to be the kind of stat categories I'm looking at. And over that range, you can see some of your top players here. So it's about like a 20% modeling ranking, just pure approach play itself, along with the fact that we're going to add another approach category later. So this is by far my number one key stat, is almost always the number one key stat that I'm looking at. And a few poppers, right? Tom Hoagie always showing up there. Corey really been hitting his irons well of late. Shane Lowry too. Cam Young, Scotty always showing up in that category. No one that's really surprising up here. So in terms of value plays, you got Victor Perez showing up, Jake Knapp down there at 6,500. Lucas Glover always a flusher with the irons, so we would expect to see that. But Chandler Phillips at the dead minimum there. Nick Taylor there at $6,600. Andrew Putnam gaining about a half a stroke per round are all going to get a significant boost in my sort of modeling. The next thing I want to look at would be distance from center of fairway. So oftentimes we're just talking about off the tee play at an off the tee heavy golf course. That's not the kind of track that we have, right? If you saw before, right, in the course fit tool over there on Data Golf, driving distance is nearly a zero correlation. So what we're looking at here is with distance of center of fairway is how close to the center of fairway can you hit it, right? On those dog legs, can you make sure that you're not going to have those overhanging limbs? And the players that really benefit there would be a Brian Harmon, Akshay Bhatia, extremely accurate off the tee. Malnati, Lowry again showing up. McCarthy, Seabez, real good gainers in that category. Webb Simpson, multiple time winner at this golf course, absolutely has killed it at the RBC Heritage. Harris English, Adam Schenk, Seamus Power, Russell Henley, all players that I'm going to be giving a little bit of a boost out there for this golf tournament. The next stat I want to point you guys to are approaches from 175 to 200. And to circle back to the Data Golf stuff, right, this 175 to 200 yard range accounts for nearly 30% of your approaches, way higher than what we're used to seeing for any golf tournament. And a lot of that are because of those layups that I was showing you before, and just some of the longer par fours to begin with. So if we're taking a look at 175 to 200, and this is over the last 24 rounds, just like the other stats we're looking at, that would be a Colin Morikawa, Eric Van Rooyen, Eric Cole, Cameron Young, Matt Fitzpatrick, all really fit that category. Matt Fitz, of course, won this last year, and Cameron Young, another guy that was showing up emphatically when we were looking at those approach stats. So good that they're showing up there twice. You got Sam Burns up there in the top end of the category. Tom Hoagie, another just really good approach player. Decent with his driving accuracy, have to say, right, is about the middle of the field when it comes to distance of center of fairway, but this is truly a Tom Hoagie sort of golf course. Nick Taylor again, you love that, right? Accurate and decent from this 175 range. Kurt Kitayama shows up across both categories. Benny Ann shows up in both categories there. So if you're looking for sleeper plays, and especially like 6K guys like a Justin Rose, I think really fits this golf course. Nick Taylor, I think, is going to be a pretty popular play because of how well he's been playing, but really fits this kind of golf course. Are guys that at the RBC Heritage could legit win this golf tournament, right? I mentioned off the bat that it's a little bit more wide open than we have for a lot of other signature events. A lot of that because of the type of skill set that you need here. Another few things I want to look at, I think regular putting is always important to include, right? Just over the last 24 rounds, who's playing the best. But putting on the POA overseed that we have is something we can look at because of the sample size, right? We're this far into the season. We've had like 6 events where we've had this POA overseed. So if we look at the last 24 rounds, we can see how most of these guys have just putted at those specific venues. So Matty Fitz has been on fire just in general putting well, but even better on this POA overseed. You can say the same thing about Peter Malnati, guys like Denny McCarthy, right, all better on the overseed. Nick Taylor, same thing, showing up again, right? So Nick Taylor obviously going to be a piece of value this week, at least in my exposure. Guys like Thomas Dietrich showing up. Brendan Todd actually a little bit worse on the overseed than he's done on the regular greens, but all of these players that can get it done on the overseed, they're getting a little bit of a boost this week. But it is worth noting that Jordan Spieth 2 years ago did win the RBC Heritage while losing strokes putting on the greens. So that's not something that we usually see from tour events. It happens like maybe once, twice a year. And the RBC Heritage is one of those few golf courses where that can happen. But just to circle back to the course fit model, right? It's still being included over there on the data golf side, unlike driving distance, right? Which is just like in terms of relative importance is essentially non-existent out there at the RBC Heritage. Putting is still somewhat valuable there. So putting is lower on my modeling than what we have. Of course, guys, this is the Bet the Number website over here. They didn't have an RBC Heritage model posted when I'm recording this video, so I went ahead and just made my own on here. So this is all correlated to what I'm looking at early in the week. Now, when I'm going and doing my DFS modeling, I'm going to add in some birdie stats and whatnot to try and encapsulate some of the Draftkings perspective, right? Not just the betting perspective of what I want to look at here. But you can see, right, putting isn't quite as valuable as it is for some weeks, right? I've got 15% on regular putting, 15% over there on the overseeded surface, and that gives us a pretty good idea of what to expect here. So let me see if I can get out of that tab. There we go. I don't want to rerun the modeling or anything, but normally, right, putting is like 40% of my model. This week, it's only at a 30% rate. So again, slightly de-emphasizing that, and then off the tee power is not non-existent, right? It's still included in the off the tee metrics that I'm looking at, but it is by far de-emphasized compared to most of those tour events. So that's what I'm looking at for modeling. If you want to look at shots gained at Harbour Town, you can see some of the guys that have played really well here. You've got Patrick Cantlay, Cam Davis showing up, JT Poston, Justin Rose again showing up. So I know Rose, right, like long-term or at least recent form rise is losing strokes to the field, has missed some cuts, but long-term has played really well here. So he could be a course horse to look out for a little bit of a bounce back from. Tommy Fleetwood's played well here, of course, played really well at the Masters over the weekend. EVR again, Matt Fitzpatrick with his win, Brian Harmon with his course fit, you'd expect him to play well here. And when you put that all together, course fit is in course history is part of my modeling out there. Scotty is number 1, obviously, but Seabass number 2. That's surprising in this strong of a field. Matt Fitzpatrick, last year's winner at number 3. You'd hope to see that. But Akshay Bhatia, a little bit of a sleeper play, especially with that accuracy. Xander Schauffele, just a well-rounded player, so you'd expect to see him up there. Aberg surprisingly showing up. It's not really a course that fits him all that well, but even with that, just he's playing too good of golf not to pop in the modeling. So that's really impressive. But guys, I kind of was looking forward to seeing here. It'd be like a Brian Harmon, right? In theory, really fits this golf course. Denny McCarthy, same thing. Cameron Young just playing some really solid golf. But the players that are popping here that, are values, that guys that we wouldn't expect, are these shorter plotter sort of players, right? Like a Peter Malnati, for example, a Tom Hoagie, a Russell Henley, a Nick Taylor down here, Shane Lowry even, right? Matthew Pavon are the guys that really fit in RBC Heritage. So it's not like guys like a Cam Young that or Bomber can't get it done here. Same thing with like Xander, right? Even Scotty Scheffler. Obviously, I still have a lot of them towards the top of my modeling. It's just the ones that get a little bit of an extra boost, right? The ones that even without all those shots gained metrics are still showing up are the ones that are those shorter plotter sort of players. So that's what I'm doing. I'm favoring those sort of guys, especially for my value plays, whether it's for outrights or over there for DFS. And now let's quickly look at a few comp courses that I'm using for this week. So just trying to find some leaderboards that we can use for comparison to perhaps try and get some course history for the guys that haven't played harder Harbour Town all that much. So first off, we got the Wyndham Championship, so Sedgefield Country Club, another shorter track where it's much more about your precision off the tee than it is that driving distance. It's a lot about the wedges. Some of that 175 to 200 yard range is also slightly more important at this golf course, so like that kind of crossover. And if we take a look at last year's winner, of course, Lucas Glover, but a lot of the guys that we talked about as good course fits, right? I mean, even Webb Simpson, right, who's been amazing here. I mean, Cam Davis, JT Poston, right, guys that have elite course history at both tracks show up time and time again at both of these venues. So you can take a look at that. Year before that, it was Tom Kim winning, who is going to be one of the more bet players this week. I know he was like 100 to 1 on some sports books, so a lot of people were trying to get that in. But Sun GM, Ben Griffin, really a short course specialist. Russell Henley, once again. There's Taylor Moore, who's on a heater of late. If we go to the year before that, it was Kevin Kisner winning, who of course is like the course horse of the week here at the RBC Heritage. But Siwoo Kim, a Pete Dye specialist. You have guys like Russell Henley showing up again, Webb Simpson. It's no surprise that they show up at the Wyndham Championship, and the RBC Heritage is that same sort of venue. Next up, we're going to go with the home of the FedEx St. Jude, which is actually the next week on tour, the first event of the FedEx Cup playoffs. And it's another shorter track where there's a lot of water in play, even more so than what you have at Harbour Town. And off the tee, it's about that precision. It's about some of the shorter clubs into greens. And because of the water and all of the layups, you still have quite a few of those long irons. So I'd say even more so than the Wyndham Championship, the approach profile is eerily similar at the FedEx St. Jude as to what we're going to get this week at the Heritage. And Lucas Glover won that event too, so if you're looking for the comp course history, I mean, he's gonna pop there. But Patrick Cantlay, right, just showing up time and time again at this golf course, also shows up there. Tommy Fleetwood, one of those course poppers, showing up. Taylor Moore again. So, it's just uncanny that all the same guys are showing up. But Cam Davis, Corey Connors has showed up here before. Russell Henley again. You go to the year before that, you got Will Zalatoris winning, Sepp Straka in second. There's Brian Harmon. There's Lucas Glover that we were looking for. There's Matty Fitz, right, winner last year. These shorter positional sort of golf courses are insanely correlated. If you go to the year before that, this was an extremely strong event for the FedEx St. Jude. It always is because it's a FedEx Cup playoff event, but you had all the live golfers back then, so you could see up there maybe a little bit of a different feel, but usually at that event you get a lot of that crossover, and that's why you get that kind of consistency. And then the last one I want to look at is Pebble Beach. So going way back to the West Coast swing, agronomy is extremely different. It's also a par 72. So a lot of differences here, but you've got the tiny green complexes. That is also a thing over there at Sedgefield, and also what you have at TPC Southwind. And then, of course, Pebble Beach Golf Links, another golf link design that we have to compare to. But a really short course, right? It's all about that precision off the tee, and then wedges and in a lot of cases, longer irons into the greens, right? I'm thinking hole number 8, it's that forced layup where they make you hit like a 200-yard approach. That same sort of aspect goes on a lot of holes there. So if we take a look at some of the leaderboard crossover, Wyndham Clark and Aberg got it done. So bombers, right, in these signature events can still get it done, right? So that's why I pointed out before that Cam Young's, Scheffler still showing up. It's not like they can't get it done, but then you have the shorter guys coming up, like a Pavon, right? Mark Hubbard, for example. Tom Hoagie, really liking that golf course, has won there at Pebble Beach before. We go to the year before that, you got guys like Justin Rose winning, who, of course, I said, really would fit this golf course and has played well at the Heritage. Well, he's also played well at Pebble, right? One of our top comp courses. Peter Malnati showing up. Denny McCarthy right there, shorter, more positional sort of players. Year before that, it was Tom Hoagie winning, right? Jordan in second, who of course has just been in contention, right? Every time he's played at the Heritage lately. You have Patrick Cantlay showing up again. Matty Fitz. It's these comp courses, these positional sort of tracks are extremely correlated to each other. So you don't just want to look at the stats this week, your key stats and modeling. You also want to take a look at some of these comp courses, as they can be extremely valuable for some of your analysis. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for this week's course breakdown. Before you hop on out of here, go ahead and smash that like button for me, and also go ahead and comment down below what you've got as your winning score for this golf tournament. If you can get that winning score correct, you will get a free month of my Patreon page. So go ahead, give me your best guess down below, and let's go out there and have ourselves a week. We're going to have content dropping tonight, also throughout the week, covering the Heritage. So if you're playing for fantasy for betting, keep an eye for my preview dropping out later this evening. And of course, our weekly live stream Wednesday at 7 p.m. where you can go over any questions that you have for this golf tournament, whether it's betting based, whether it's just about the event in general, weather, ownership for DFS, props on Underdog and Prize Picks. That's where we're going to go over all of that information. So make sure to stop on by for that. Set a reminder Wednesday at 7 p.m. again, and bring any questions that you've got, and let's crush it. So I'm looking forward to it. Should be a really fun week. I know the Masters, of course, was our Super Bowl, so it's kind of harder to keep the energy levels up, but hey, they give us a signature event, right? They at least give us all the world's best players, so it makes it a little bit easier to stay connected. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you guys are as well, and to see you guys for the rest of that throughout the week.